and we start looking at like hiring help, you got to understand the problem we're trying to solve.
That's why I hate
Yeah.
VAs. I mean, I love VAs. You should hire VAs.
All right.
Welcome back to Beyond the Pump, where today we're going to break down the idea and use cases for VAs, virtual assistants, but we're also going to give you some of those things that are maybe less talked about, some of the things to be aware of, and what to make sure you're paying attention to when it comes to hiring VAs, because it is not as simple as hire a person for $5-6 an hour and they get the job done, which is what a lot of people think. So, Andrew, how do you want to start this one off, buddy?
I think it's a good segue. Recently, if you've been following along sequentially on the timeline, we've had a lot of business inquiries recently or questions that have happened to generate a lot of our last couple episodes. So, to recap, in the automation series, in the first one, we talked about conceptually how do you even know when it's time to automate? In the last episode, we talked about some general workflows or automations, and we kind of discussed two or three of the most important ones that we think starting out will make your life a lot easier. And we start looking at like hiring help, you got to understand the problem we're trying to solve when we're giving you this information. The problem we're trying to help you solve anyway is that you feel like you are absolutely drowning in your work. You either feel like you don't have enough hours in the day to do the admin stuff, you have silent screams into the podcast, you have you have to eat cold chicken and rice because you don't have time to scratch your ass between meetings, right? There's just so much in your face. And just a real quick caveat to that, like chances are you're just really not organized. You don't know what to organize until you get overwhelmed. And so those are the things that, as we're talking about automations, how to use SaaS or software as a service and or technology in the last couple was really the idea. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit, I think, of how humans can potentially help you and how you don't have to pay $350,000 for a chief technology officer just to send out a couple emails and help you figure out a couple odds and ends. There are people that can really be helpful for you. And I think that it warrants a conversation. Obviously, Steve has a very strong opinion on this, it sounds like. I've seen companies thrive with virtual assistants, right? Basically, right? Yeah, virtual assistants, which is usually a term we use to discuss people that are usually foreign nationals, people from different countries that provide some kind of service that are significantly cheaper than what you would find hiring a full-time employee amongst the states. So as we kind of navigate, he's just loading. I can see him loading up over there. He's stretching his neck. You can kind of tell he's like, fucking, all right, Andrew, come on, get done with the context. But that's really, again, at the end of the day, this is just another version of automation. You're now going to have to train someone, however, to potentially understand the workflow and the service the same way that you would have to diagram it out in the technology platform. Either way, you're going to have to train a robot, a program, or a person. We're just going to go in the people orientation for right now. So, Steve, what's your opinion on VAs, specifically the ones in West Africa?
So the next 20 minutes is going to sound like I probably dislike VAs. I'd like to lead this off with I actually really think VAs in businesses can be an amazing way to go. Okay. You can pay somebody relatively inexpensive for what you would pay in US and similar countries in terms of wages and whatnot, very, very well for where they live, let's say Philippines, South America, things like that. And it is very much a win-win-win around. Somebody making $8 an hour in the Philippines, they are making a lot of money, like significant amount of money.
Relative to us.
$8 per hour to them is a lot of money. So
What's the exchange rate?
what was that?
You're good. I'm just looking at the exchange rate.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think it's like 100 and something thousand or 10 something thousand, but when you on like a monthly basis,
Oh my gosh, one Filipino peso is 1 cent.
yeah,
That's wild. I didn't know it
crazy.
was that
But
bad. All right, that good.
so somebody can get paid really well while you can save a lot of money and not having to hire very, call it, expensive help that eats away at your margins. Here is why I don't overly love VAs though. And the reason has to do with you hiring them because most times in this industry, we hire somebody, we tell them to go complete and create an outcome, and we suck at training them. We suck at leading them, we suck at giving feedback to them, and we just simply don't do a great job. So in turn, they end up not thriving. They end up losing their job. And the reality is it's on you. So thing number one is when you're hiring any VA, especially a VA, but any employee in general, it requires time and effort and energy and SOPs and things like that to make sure that it's actually working. When you hire any
Mhm.
person, 30 days minimum, you
100%.
should be spending time with them, helping them get really good at their job, answering questions with them, for them, asking questions
Mhm.
of them, and also just being there generally to create the relationship that you need to succeed in that working relationship. And a lot of people aren't going to put that time because like you tend to wait till you're way overloaded. So you're going to hire somebody right now to solve the problem, hand it all off, shit tanks, you freak out, you fire them, and you take it all back. So first things first, if you're hiring a VA, you need to know you're going to put 30 days worth of work into making sure that they are at least good enough to not get fired in the next 60 days.
Mhm.
Now,
Well,
now the long-term work comes in. Daily huddles, weekly meetings, quarterly feedback loops in terms of performance. Are we hitting metrics? Are we doing the things that we need to do? And now you have to be a leader. The thing I find challenging for myself is the communication amongst different cultures can be a little bit harder. So when I type to a VA in Slack, my normal words, a lot of times it's like, oh, is this good? Is this bad or whatever? So I'll almost always get a question back clarifying, oh, what's going on? Now I've spent time with the VAs that I get to work with. We are on weekly meetings at this point in time. They know my personality, they understand what's going on. And I would say weekly meetings is probably 3 times a week at minimum. So they're comfortable enough to ask oh, what do you mean, Steve? Whereas when I first started working with some of them, that wasn't the case. And they would just kind of internalize it. So that communication piece is a little bit more of a struggle because of a cultural difference. But thing number one to be careful of is you have to train anybody you hire, but expect because of language and culture differences a little bit extra when it comes to a VA. And on top of it, you never spend time in person. There's somebody who has a 12-hour time difference across the other side of the world that you're always talking to through a computer screen and through messaging apps. It's going to take some time and a little effort and a little energy there. So, thing number one is just know that. Like, typically business owners do not take enough time to train their VAs. So
let me just so for those of you that start to like envision the little small Chinese child in the bottom of a sweatshop somewhere, like that's not what the working conditions are. So before you try to figure out a way to smuggle a human in a shipping container across the country to get them freedom, please, please understand that they, generally speaking, have a pretty decent quality of life. And when you take in, the $8 over there would be $800 in Filipino pesos, and that could be a pretty
per hour,
drastic change
800 per
per
hour.
hour. Yeah, imagine making $800 per hour. Now, obviously, there's not the same exchange ratio.
But that's
So,
32,000 Filipino pesos a week at $8 an hour.
yeah, imagine that. And I'm fairly certain, like, lunch and dinner and stuff like that are still probably like 15, 20 pesos, right? Comparably. And so I don't know. So maybe we can get someone, hey, if you're from the Philippines or you've ever worked with someone or you've ever traveled there, if you could just comment in the YouTube channel what a traditional meal will cost in US dollars over there, that'd be great. So we're actually going to need you to comment that. And if you don't, you're kind of a terrible human because you're going to get someone shipped in a shipping container because they think that,
Jesus.
again, they're in a sweatshop somewhere. So do your civic duty, okay? Just fucking comment. Um, but all that to say, I think what a lot of people lack when they hire a virtual assistant is that they forget to consider that this person is basically an employee, regardless of the time zone, regardless of where they are performing functions for your brand and your company, and they reflect upon you. And one of the things that we found was always really problematic inside of the training industry is that people would hire, and I'm referring to my time at Lifetime, people would get so busy, they would need so much scheduling availability that they would hungry hire. And in fact, I even knew someone at one point that was pretty high up in the company who said, you need a leadership position filled, go hire someone tomorrow. I don't know who you're going to hire that's good at that potential position within a 24-hour period that's willing to do something, unless you come in and offer them an astronomical amount of money or incentivize them in a large, large way. So now you're going to hire someone that's a poor reflection on your company that may not have the job skills or competencies, and you may not have the bandwidth to train them. So you cannot effectively take on a project. So as you're going through, and if you've paid attention in the first automation series, the second one, like if you don't have some basic automations, you're going to get frustrated because the person's going to underperform because you can't clearly communicate what it is that they should be doing. And so as Steve mentions, huddles, weekly performance reviews, like those are the things that we talk about in our monthly workshops. And if you don't know what that is and you are like, oh my gosh, I'm so lost, sign up for the next one. We have one coming up in April. It's imperative that you be there if you don't know how to start to get beyond that 5 to 10 person. Now, if you wait until you're at 20 clients, and that's when you start to, oh my gosh, like I'm getting a little overwhelmed. I've been overwhelmed for a couple months. You're either going to burn out, you're going to hungry hire, or you're going to shutter your business. Those are usually the three outcomes that people will, when they get in a bad spot, try to alleviate some of that stress. Or they slow down, they lose some clients, then they figure out their processes, and then they can kind of just buffer that a little bit. And those are the people that tend to be successful, as they expect to have those setbacks. So you'll probably go through a couple. You'll evolve as a leader. You'll evolve as a communicator. Please understand that those are the essential skills that as you start to hire, you have to then step out of the I'm now the only person delivering. That's my sole responsibility. Hey, I hired you. I'm paying you money. Go do the thing that I hired you for. And they're like, I don't fucking know how. You have to spend time now mentoring and being a teacher for that person. So as a caveat and aside, VAs, employees, basically, while they're great, you don't have to pay benefit packages, yada, yada, yada. You just pay them a straight flat rate. Can serve as a good stopgap, but they'll never replace having someone that's co-located for the most part in terms of culture, in terms of being able to have those powwows, pop your head in the office. This is why we see there's such a resurgence of go back to work mandates that are happening right now, whether you agree with them or not. There's a lot more efficiency that can happen if that time is well used. So I'm a big fan of the hybrid work situation, to be clear.
Yeah,
But,
and I think too, like everybody goes, oh, well, why do I have to spend so much time with somebody? The reality is, let's say you spend 4 hours a week with a person helping them get better and do their job effectively. They should theoretically be spending the other 36 hours creating output. Or inversely, they should be able to save you 36 hours a week of other work by you only having to input 4 hours a week. So it's literally your duty as their leader to invest time in them and continue to give them feedback and help them grow. So just to prove that point. Reason number 2 that I hate VAs, though, but I love VAs, is traditionally VAs have a higher turnover rate than home US based employees. And the reason is it is very easy for a company to go out there and say, oh, you're getting paid $8 an hour. I'll give you $8.50 an hour. And that, without a relationship, without some tenure behind it, can cause VAs to go ahead and jump to that next job. And going back to kind of point number 1, the lack of relationship building causes them to not feel overly welcome or a part of the team. So at the end of the day, they don't have that level of commitment built in because you're not committed to them, is the feeling. Now, the negative there is you're going to have to spend that 30 days investing somebody and training them multiple times in a year if you don't do a good job getting them truly on board, because it is very easy for a VA to go, oh, I'm going to go find this new job, because it's not like we're competing at $100,000 to 130 to 150,000 US dollars in terms of jobs where a skill set pays within a band. US companies, 8 or 9 or $10, not really the end of the world. And that is a pretty solid swing in terms of income for somebody, again, using Philippines as the example. And there's a website, onlinejobs.ph, like that's a great one. Get a lot of skill sets there. And Filipinos tend to be very creative with their work, which is also just like, all right, this group of people, they can be good at social media. They can be good at all these things, but you have to make sure you create the relationship. Otherwise, it is going to be a higher turnover rate than your typical employee in your company. And that's going to cause some pain there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they're basically just guns for hire if you think about the fact that they're going to chase. I'm not saying that they're going to chase the dollar, but you got to understand the law of economics here. If there's nothing beyond the paycheck that keeps someone with you, then, what reason you really can't be mad when they're like, hey, I got an extra, what is that, an extra 400 pesos per hour. You're like, fuck, someone's going to give you $400 an hour raise. Yeah, you're going to take that shit. It just makes sense. And so you want to hedge against that risk a little bit by being a good leader. And you got to understand too that when you train people, and this is something that you should make very clear from the beginning and reinforce intermittently, is that when you train them, you're making them more valuable. And that's another unspoken part of a compensation package, is that you're helping someone gain competency in a skill set, which they can then turn around and use and leverage somewhere else. So the question you have to ask yourself is like, are you making someone more valuable? Because there's always a two-way exchange. If you just make it transactional about the dollar, you're going to lose culture every time. But if you actually add the humanizing element of like, hey, I actually care about you, I want you to be better for whatever comes next, I think that's a really empowering perspective to help people feel like you actually do care about them. Now, the question becomes like exactly what Steve said, you're going to turnover is crazy, right? So when you think about the nature of how do you, well, I don't have that kind of time, I'm giving up 4 hours. People will look at the 4 hours and forget about the 36 that they gain on the other end. But there's also the idea here that if you spend 4 hours a week for a month, you've given up 32 hours. You've almost given up a full work week. But beyond that, if they take that and they run with that for a significant period of time, let's say they do that for 6 months, right? You've bought back 6 months of whatever 36 is, was it 180, 192
4 hours
hours
a week for a
time
month
back.
is 16, not 36.
Yeah. Well, you get it.
Aren't you supposed to be good
right?
at math?
Dude, I'm so carb depleted right now. Yeah, so pardon my math. Thank you, Steve. That's why there's two of us. But you start looking at how much time you get back per week, and what the fuck did I say 32? Jesus Christ. Anyways, spend the time with people rather than skimping out on them and doing a 30-minute once a week touch base. If you do the 30 minutes once a week, that person will probably be gone in 2 to 4 months. If you spend more time with that person and make sure they feel comfortable with the tasks and they can give you good feedback on what's happening and what's not, they might stay for a year. They might stay for 2 years, right? So that's where investing a little time up front with a client, with a VA, with an employee, it's going to pay huge dividends on the back end for longevity and retention of team members. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, do not skip 52 meetings with your employee. It's just bad.
It's 54.
It's just bad.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. It doesn't make people feel great either. And I think if people feel useful, they'll feel like they want to engage. And that's really your job, is to help people feel useful inside of the cog that is your brand or machine. The money's cool, but people's sense of fulfillment and like self-efficacy really matters if you want to get in the psychological roots of it. So how do you set people up to feel like they're winning? That's your whole job as a leader more than anything, outside of being a business owner, which is to manage the profitability of the company. So like profitability, winning, merge those two, very successful brand probably for the most part. Unless you're just shitty at service.
The last thing I'll throw out there, and the third reason why I hate hiring VAs, is once you hire them, once you train them, and when they're doing their job, you do need to then check their work on the other side still. And ultimately, the reason is they're not accustomed to speaking English. They're not accustomed to the culture. They're not accustomed to the things that are potentially happening on a frequent basis. So when you have them, especially if they're engaging on any way with like audience or with clients, you just want to make sure that things are being done correctly, that there's not really any major spelling errors, or the makeup of the sentence that's being sent is in fact the way that you want it to be. And I've seen too many times where a VA gets in trouble Meanwhile, I'm like, the business owner, they ignored them, and I'm like, that's not the VA's fault. And that's just it all comes back, like these three things and the reasons why it comes back to the manager or the owner of the business just not wanting to put the work in, and they think hiring a human means I never have to touch it again and worry about it. The reality is they're getting the work done, but you still have to put checks and balances in. If you're not going to train them, you're not going to support them, you're not going to give them feedback, you're not going to continue to elevate them, you're not going to check their work when they need to. And this isn't micromanaging checking. This is just making sure that somebody understands the message is hitting the way you want it to hit. That's what needs to happen. And far too often that doesn't happen. And that is not the fault of the VA. Okay. Hire somebody from South America or somewhere from South Africa or from Philippines or wherever, and expect them to be perfect and caught up on the day to day of what's happening in the United States of America is very unrealistic. And that's the issue that I oftentimes see. So again, I actually love VAs for the managers and the business owners that are willing to put in the work to make it work, because you can get way more production out and you can have great employees, great team members, great people to show up and work with and for every day. But if you're not going to put that work in, it's just going to put you into this ever revolving cycle of hiring and firing and chaos, and it's just not going to help you. So that's why I hate VAs. I mean, I love VAs. You should hire VAs, but I hate business owners that can't manage and know how to handle VAs. So read between the lines as you wish. You suck, is what I'm trying to say, business owner.
So, yeah, I mean, and again, I think that a lot of people assume that as business grows, they're going to be great at managing people and they're going to be great at leading people. And, at the end of the day, it is a very different job skill set that, you're going to have to evolve and adapt towards. It's going to be very frustrating if you don't go in with a learner's mentality and you think, man, I got this thing on lock and I'm going to be such a great leader and a great man. Like you probably got no idea. If you never managed a schedule of like a bunch of bartenders and bar backs and servers, like that's basically what this is going to feel like, is hurting a bunch of fucking cats and people that are probably partially on drugs. So, and God forbid your VA also learned English listening to 50 Cent. Like imagine that. And now they're loose interacting with your potential clientele. And so you just get a lot of different things that require a little bit of quality control and oversight. And again, I think that if you keep that in mind and you understand that they're doing the best that they can, it's a reflection of your ability to effectively teach them more than anything. It'll be a harmonious, very fruitful relationship for the most part. If you forget those things and it becomes like, oh my gosh, this person sucks, I can't believe I hired them, like I can't get, you're the problem. So you better fix that before, or get some guidance, I should say, because every time you lose an employee, it drastically affects and impacts the reflection of your brand to your audience and your consumers. Because now there's always that learning curve. There's a different way of talking. Like shit just gets weird. So try to keep the same person to really alleviate in that long-term confusion from the consumer side as well. But yeah, anything to close us out?
No, sir. We know my feelings. Go be a good leader, and VAs will be an amazing addition to the team. If they're not an amazing addition to the team, it's because you suck as a leader, so you got to get better. So without further ado, though, we appreciate you hanging out today with us on Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition. If you don't like this episode, why? Throw that in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and just like it anyways. Until next time, gang.